Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's start with a check of the top headlines this hour. Trump says the US might launch a second strike on Venezuela if the government doesn't cooperate. Venezuela's interim president Delcy Rodríguez creates a commission to seek the release of President Nicolás Maduro and his wife Celia Flores. The UN Security Council will meet after the United States attacked Venezuela and removed President Nicolás Maduro, a move the UN Secretary General warned could set a dangerous precedent. A total of 32 Cuban nationals killed during the US attacks on Caracas that culminated in the capture of Nicolás Maduro. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung to meet China's Xi Jinping today in Beijing, aiming to repair strained ties with Seoul's biggest trading partner. China-Pakistan call for more visible and verifiable actions to dismantle and eliminate all terrorist organizations entrenched in Afghanistan. Ukraine military says one person killed so far in Russia's attack on Kyiv, says attacks still ongoing. Asian stocks opened higher as investors assess the impact of the US ouster of Venezuelan leader Nicolás Maduro. Oil prices edged higher in early Asian trading, while precious metals surged as markets reacted in mixed ways. And whereas US President Donald Trump is widening his hardline stance toward Latin America. Trump issued sharp warnings to Colombia, Cuba and Mexico. The remarks come as a US operation captured Venezuela's Nicolás Maduro and brought him to New York on drug trafficking charges. Trump suggested possible military action against Colombia, blaming it for cocaine flowing into the US. He also said Cuba may be close to collapse and could fall without US intervention. Trump also criticized Mexico, saying it must get its acts together. The comments signal a more confrontational US posture across the US and the Americas. Let's listen in to US President's comments.
Now we have a very sick neighbor. It's not a neighbor, but it's close to a neighbor, and that's Venezuela. It's very sick. Colombia is very sick too, run by a sick man who likes making cocaine and selling it to the United States, and he's not going to be doing it very long, let me tell you.
What does that mean? He's not going to be doing it very long.
He's not doing it very long. He has cocaine mills and cocaine factories. He's not going to be doing it very long.
So there will be an operation by the U.S. and
it sounds good to me. Yeah. You know why? Because they kill a lot of people. Yeah. You have to do something with Mexico. Mexico has to get their act together because they're pouring through Mexico, and we're going to have to do something. We'd love Mexico to do it. They're capable of doing it, but unfortunately the cartels are very strong in Mexico.
All right, now joining me in this discussion is Andrew K.P. Leong, who's a China strategist, and he joins us from Hong Kong. Thanks, Mr. Leong, for joining me in this discussion. Now, of course, we have all been noting everything that's happening in Venezuela, but what's next for the other countries that Trump has just spoken about? Mexico, Cuba, Colombia, should they be threatened?
This is, of course, part of President Trump's ambition by turning the entire Western Hemisphere, that includes North America, including Canada, including Greenland, but also South America, the entire South America, including Venezuela and Colombia and so on, into a sphere of dominance by the United States, harking back to the old historic Monroe Doctrine. You can now call it the Donald Doctrine now. And then his Secretary of State said to the abduction, the kidnapping of another country's leader is not an innovation, and therefore it doesn't require congressional approval. Well, that reminds me of a very ancient Chinese saying that an emperor can just point to a deer and said it's a horse. I think that this is I think that it is a great deal of disrespect to people's common sense and rationality, and it's throwing the credibility and respectability of the American leadership into the gutters. All he wants, of course, is to seize other countries' resources. In this case, Venezuela's huge oil reserves, which is the largest in the world, larger than the Saudi Arabia. But of course, all these small countries cannot compete or cannot defend the might of American military power. But I think that he's underestimating the resistance of the people themselves, because no people would like to be under the thumb of another country. Nationalism runs high in most of the countries, be it in Mexico or in Venezuela or in Colombia. As far as Venezuela is concerned, it's also a failed state because Maduro government is not very popular and it's of course highly corrupt and also involved in drugs. But it's still, it is a country bound together by various internal dynamics. And a lot of the people in Venezuela do not want to be the slaves of another country. And then, of course, Colombia is a very large country. It's about 3.7 times the size of the United Kingdom, even though this population is only about half of the United Kingdom, something like 30 million. But still, it's a large country. But also, the institutions are all broken, and they're bound together by cartels, resistance, militias, all sorts of factions. And to think that President Trump can run such a country is a little bit far-fetched. I think that if he it continues on this path, he could be walking into the quagmire, not unlike the earlier examples of Afghanistan and the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, thinking that the United States could just change the governance of another country. Look what happened in Afghanistan. Look what happened in Iraq, in the Iraq war. And then this has these two adventures caused thousands and millions of people's deaths, but also huge cost to the American taxpayer, and dragging down the America for aid for years. And that's why countries like China and Russia are not thinking of immediate military intervention, because that would, of course, pitch the nuclear powers into the possibility of a world war. But of course, relying on the platform of the United Nations to expose this hypocrisy, and then the lack of respectability of the American leadership, knowing full well that that's not going to end Trump's actions, but gradually allowing Trump just to stew in his folly. And of course, as far as the Venezuela situation is concerned, he was belittling the lady, a politician who won the election, but was sidelined by Maduro, and who eventually got the Nobel Peace Prize. Obviously, she had enough political support, but then Trump doesn't believe in her because she is not necessarily wanting to be under the thumb.
Do you think this entire invasion was actually because of the petrodollar, not about democracy, not about drugs, not about terrorism, but real threat that Trump was seeing was that of petrodollar, because Venezuela had now started to import its oil in rubles and yuan and not in dollar?
Well, the so-called petrodollar is long gone. I mean, the petrodollar was born because the United States used to be the biggest energy customer and then buying almost the bulk of the Middle East oil. And then at that time, when at the period, a era of unipolarity, imposing his will on the Arab Peninsula, and then mandating the sale of oil must be in $1, and that led to the birth of the petrodollar. But now, America is now the world's exporter, is a competitor. It's no longer an energy importer. The biggest energy importer in the world is China. The biggest still remains the biggest customer. So that's why the Middle East is pivoting towards China, because America is no longer the biggest customer or not even the competitor as far as energy export is concerned. So gone are the days of the petrodollar. But of course, with Venezuela, a lot of the reserves are still underground. Even though China is biggest customer of oil, but the sale of Venezuelan oil to China only accounts for about 5%, not 50%, 5% only, because China gets its oil from Russia, from the Middle East, and so on. So it's not going to hurt China. But then Trump has also said, well, only yesterday, saying that, oh, okay, I mean, he's a very good friend of President Xi, and then what's happening with Venezuela is not going to hurt China interest, because Venezuela is going to sell its oil to China as well. Now think about it. The United States doesn't lack oil. The United States is the world's biggest oil producer. It wants the money. And where do you get the money? The biggest customer in the world is China. And so the talk about the petrodollar, and then of course when China buys oil, is unlikely to be in dollar, but because it's only 5% of China's energy needs, and of course the China's trading in oil with Russia and Saudi Arabia are increasingly in their mutual currencies. And you think about it. I mean, if one country buys a large amount of energy from another, like between Saudi Arabia and China, why do they need the US dollar? Because that would slow the process, and it will increase costs. And why just trade on their own respective currencies? So this talk about petrodollar is a bit of overhype now. But of course, Trump wants to restore the dominance of the dollar. But it's not just the dollar. He wants all the resources. He wants to grow the Americans' influence throughout the Western Hemisphere. As I said, want to double down on the old Monroe Doctrine to make it become the Donald Doctrine, controlling the entire Western Hemisphere.
All right. Thanks, Dr. Leong, for your response. But do continue to stay on with me as we have some more information to give our viewers. Now, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said that the idea of Venezuelan elections after Maduro's ouster is as of now premature. Rubio said that the focus should be on ensuring that the remaining Venezuelan leadership enacts policy changes first. He also stressed that the U.S. is ready to work with Venezuela's current leaders if they make the right decision. Rubio made it clear that U.S. pressure will remain on the country through a naval presence and oil export embargo. Rubio also defended U.S. military operation that led to Maduro's capture, calling it a law enforcement operation, not an invasion. He said the operation did not require congressional approval, as it was a targeted arrest of Maduro and wife, who now face charges in the U.S. Hear that statement.
Elections? Well, look, this is a country that's been governed by this regime now for 14 or 15 years. The elections should have happened a long time ago. The elections did happen. They lost them, and they didn't count the votes, or they refused to count the votes, and everyone knows it. So all of that, I think, is premature at this point. There's a lot of work to be done here. Right now, what we are focused in, let's be realistic here, what we are focused on right now is all of the problems we had with when Maduro was there. We still have those problems in terms of them needing to be addressed. We are going to give people an opportunity to address those challenges and those problems. Until they address it, they will continue to face this oil quarantine. They will continue to face pressure from the United States. We will continue to target drug boats if they try to run towards the United States. We will continue to seize the boats that are sanctioned. I do know this, that if they don't make the right decisions, the United States will retain multiple levers of leverage to ensure that our interests are protected.
Yeah.
And that includes the oil quarantine that's in place, among other things.
Well,
and but we are going to judge moving forward. We're going to judge everything by what they do. And
Right, Shruti Das Gupta, who's an international affairs expert, now joins us in this discussion from New Delhi. Shruti, do you see the interim leadership of Venezuela to act as the US now wants it to? Do you see it negotiating? Up until now, of course, the Supreme Court had appointed Rodríguez as the interim president. Opposition continues to be there, of course, to Maduro party within Venezuela as of now as well. Do you think going forward this is going to change?
Not superficially, at least. For the optics of it, it is going to look exactly like how it is looking. There is a person heading that particular government. Though the elections, since now there are not going to be one, as at least not a forced one, as said by Marco Rubio. So this person, the lady is going to, the deputy PM is now going to lead the nation. Deputy president is going to lead the nation, and she has already declared it as an illegal act by USA. And the defense minister has called it an act of war, an act of aggression, which they will repel at every cost, even if it is a cost of life. So the optics of it is going to look like they're going to push back. Now, how will they survive? They can't, because the oil embargo is already in place, which has with an already wrecked economy of Venezuela is going to be pushed until it is going to be on its knees. They're just about killing any fisher boat out there. Whether it contains narcotics or not, whether it has drug lords on it or not, whether it has political opponents or not, they don't care. They're just going to keep taking down boats. So they've encircled it. They have found a way to choke Venezuela economically as well as militarily. And therefore, eventually, whoever is at the helm of things is going to have to bow down and say, what do you want? Because that is exactly what Maduro was also saying in his pre-recorded message that was placed on 1st January. He said, what do you want? Let's sit down and talk. Despite all of that, they went ahead and did this entire shock or grab kind of an, operation, and illegally, through every norm of international law, they have illegally captured a head of state. Whether they recognize him as a head of state or not is a different question. Now, what is going to be forth from here? Of course, there is an opposition there that does not like the Maduro regime, that does not like the party of which now the deputy president is as the acting president of. There is no election. So what is going to happen? There's going to be internal strife. People are going to try and wrest power. There are going to be wheelers and dealers in the movers, shakers of the corridors of power. People are going to try the best pop forward deal. Even the current the current acting president is going to find a way to make sure that the nation is not completely annihilated, that they can find, you want the oil, fine, take it, at least let us breathe. At least don't take any more of our leaders. At least don't put a puppet government on top of our heads. So there is going to be a negotiation, whether it is done overtly where the world can see or covertly under hushed chambers on phone calls is something that is going to be understood by us later. But most likely there is going to be a complete dominance and control of USA over the politics of Venezuela as well as the policies of Venezuela.
Okay, Shruti, thanks for your comment. Do continue to stay on with me though. Some more information now trickling in, viewers. Donald Trump's claims over Greenland have drawn sharp criticism from Denmark. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen has called on the US to stop threatening its historical ally, describing the idea of taking control of Greenland as absurd. Meanwhile, Trump had reiterated that Greenland is needed from a national security standpoint and insisted the US should have it. The comments were made aboard Air Force One, escalating tensions between Washington and Copenhagen over the future of Danish autonomous territory. Shruti requested to join us back in the discussion here. What's next for Greenland now? Of course, Trump has shown his military hegemony clearly as far as the Americas are concerned. He's also issued similar statements about Greenland earlier. How real is the fear for Denmark?
Very real. He's told you exactly what he wants. He did the same with Venezuela. He said he wanted oil and he went ahead and then grabbed their president. So the fear is very real. And Greenland doesn't have that kind of military might. It has even a lesser military might than what Venezuela has. So they will not be able to oppose him in any way or form if he decides to do a similar action with them. Why does he want Greenland? Because the Arctic ice is melting at four times the rate. It's facing global warming 4 times at the rate of the other parts of the habitable world. And so the maritime routes are being explored. Everybody, Russia, China, everybody is looking towards how to make sure that their maritime routes, their economic passages are controlled by them. Russia has a base there. Even US has a base there, which has its which overlooks its security zones. So it's not as if US does not have presence there. It's not as if it is only controlled by a rival nation or a rival economic power. Greenland is pretty much, I believe, Denmark was one of the founding members of the NATO alliance. Now imagine 2 NATO members, the founding members, at loggerheads at each other for a piece of land. This is the new imperialism in action. You have the might, you will go ahead and try and grab as much as you can. The polite diplomatic world, the world of gentlemen politicians is over. This is what Trump is showing you. There is not going to be politeness anymore. So Denmark has cause to worry. And this is what most of us analysts have been trying and trying to tell the world. This is not about Venezuela and its poverty. This is not about Venezuela and its democracy. It is not about Venezuela and suppression of freedoms. It is about resources, of which Greenland is a very rich one. EU itself has noted that it is a high concentration of zinc, uranium, gold, copper, silver. There is an abundance of lithium there. I believe 27% of the world's lithium is there, which is very critical for fighter jet technology, etc. So they want access to all of this directly. They want to control it. And that is what Trump means when he says that he wants to control Greenland and it is essential for his national security. He wants to secure the resources of Greenland for the betterment or the hegemony, continued hegemony of United States without dependence on Chinese imports, without having Russia as a potential economic competitor. So he's told you he wants Greenland. Now is the time for EU to wake up and smell the coffee. Those who were being very polite with their P's and Q's about the conversation on Venezuela should realize that if they have something that Trump wants, he's going to come and get it, because this is the new USA.
Okay, so all these nations that had yesterday issued statements to support the aggression in Venezuela, whether we talk about France, Germany, Italy, that had said that it's for the better of the people of Venezuela and ensured for a smooth transition of a regime. Do you think they should be threatened now, and what should they really be doing as far as Greenland is concerned?
Oh, they're already scrambling. Their statements about after Trump's recent statement of Greenland is like they want diplomatic solution, that such statements are not good. They're already coming out because they've really truly woken up that Trump is a genie that you cannot put back into the bottle. He cannot be controlled. If you have allowed or legitimized any of his actions up till now, you will find it very difficult to walk back on the moral path. If you allow it for Venezuela, then why not for Greenland? What is your problem? Then why condemn Russia on Ukraine? Or why condemn China on Taiwan? Aren't they all a similar format? Doesn't China want Taiwan because it believes it's right because of its history or cultural identity or its security? Does Ukraine going to NATO not threaten the national security of Russia? If all these claims are valid for USA to go ahead via economic blockades, military blockades, as well as any other route that they can find to take control of one nation, he is not going to stop. You cannot stop this. It is going to be a serial murder of democracies and diplomacy across the world. If you have something that USA wants, this new USA under Trump does not obey any law, not even the one of their own country. They cannot put in the emergency powers that Trump and his people are always quoting under the Article 2, for any usage of military might, they need congressional approval. They don't go out and about it. They have put Delta Force in Venezuela. That means there were boots on ground. It needs congressional approval. He doesn't have it. They can impeach him for this. But will that change the fact that Maduro is now in USA facing charges? No, it won't. Will that save Venezuela? No. Will it save Greenland? No. So these people, these international leaders need to understand that if you bow down to a bully in the playground, he's going to come for you next. It doesn't stop. And they need to understand that they need to gather their forces.
All right, Trump acting like an untamed bull is what you're saying, Shruti. Thanks very much for those comments once again. We do once again request you to stay on. Viewers, Trump has also now warned Iran for a strong response if security forces escalate violence against protesters. Let's hear that statement.
There's been protesters killed in Iran. You said we were locked and loaded, ready to go. What is the line there for when the U.S. is going to get involved in those protests?
We'll take a look. We're watching it very closely. If they start killing people like they have in the past, I think they're going to get hit very hard by the United States.
Meanwhile, rights groups are saying that at least 16 people have been killed during a week of unrest in Iran as protests over soaring inflation spread across the country, sparking violent clashes between demonstrators and security forces. All right, and moving ahead now, Japan's Nikkei share average surged nearly 3% on the first trading day of 2026. The rise was primarily driven by chip-related stocks as investors shrugged off concerns about the potential impact of U.S. military action in Venezuela. Bank stocks, which had struggled with low profit growth during Japan's prolonged period of low growth, inflation and interest rates, saw a boost this year. With rising rates improving lending margins, investors began showing renewed interest in these stocks. Defense stocks saw strong gains, with Mitsubishi Heavy Industries climbing more than 7%, making it the biggest gainer on the Nikkei. All 33 industry sectors on the Tokyo Stock Exchange ended the day higher, with non-ferrous metals leading the way, rising nearly 5%. And that's all we have time for. Thanks for watching NewsX World. For all international news and updates.